maybe there'll be a virtual panel on it at Comic-Con at home. It is July. It is the Comic-Con season, one of our favorite times of year here at the Best Damn Nerd Show. Love the con. It is unfortunately still Comic-Con at home this year. And a little bit of news from, if you were expecting big stuff coming from Marvel Studios or DC Films and Warner Brothers, get used to disappointment, because they are both skipping Comic-Con at home. So
they're not going to be a part of it at all, or they're just not doing major announcements?
I don't believe they're going to be a part of it at all.
That's crazy.
Certainly nothing major coming out of it.
Understandable.
Well, yeah, Comic-Con at home last year was, other than our hanging out and getting people involved on the Discord, underwhelming to say the least. Happy Trails, Lovecraft Country, which got canceled. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you. So
it's kind of crazy that, like, I mean, we had a similar conversation after E3 this year about big publishers skipping E3 or withholding big announcements and kind of just like reminding people what they're already doing. But E3 actually had like pretty good production value on some of their panels this year, because they did them like in studios or in venues that looked big and had a lot of budget. And looking back at last year's Comic-Con at home, it's such a miss. The way even just like the execution of it, like it's such low effort way.
Looking back on it, we knew that when it happened.
Yeah, and granted, I know they were only like a couple months into the pandemic at that point, but like there was a way to do better execution and just have more interesting panels and content, right?
Dude,
like that's
there was a better one a month later. And DC universe.
Fandom, the DC Fandom, which I guess Comic-Con at home will have a Legends of Tomorrow panel. So if you are still a fan of that show,
I think the problem with Comic-Con is like it's always, Comic-Con has always been an in-person activation. It's never been like a big streaming moment the way like E3 has. So like the way E3 approached it this year, by doing a convention online but having these big stage announcements, even without like big live audiences, like it still feels good. Comic-Con has never really been that. Like even the stuff that is video of Comic-Con is like a camera on like a bunch of dudes sitting in front of microphones like this. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing with Comic-Con,
like
and I'm glad we're getting into this discussion, because that's more broadly what I want to talk about in terms of the usefulness and I guess the importance of a convention like that. Granted, it's still going to be wildly popular because it is a very sort of, it's an event to be seen at, it's something to be a part of. So I'm not saying that its popularity is going to just fall off a cliff or anything like that. But I think the importance of it to these studios, as being shown, certainly it's Comic-Con at home, but Marvel skipped it before for their own convention. And now Disney is utilizing more and more their shareholder meetings, announcements to get their stuff out there. Like the ability to sort of, like, the world has changed since Comic-Con really rose to its prominence. Even when social media was still around and stuff like that, Comic-Con was still like this sort of mythical thing that you go to Hall H and that's where you get to see the trailers and stuff like that. And I think the studios at some point decided it's like, well, yeah, that's a great way to generate buzz, but now we control it so much, and it is so like the desire for it is such that it's better for us to show it in Hall H and then like an hour later blast it out on our YouTube channel anyway, so more people see it. And the importance of actually being there.
But even that approach doesn't beam out this content like to the same degree that it would if Comic-Con was just a show, which is something that, granted, they weren't equipped to do before the pandemic started. So like when they had to pivot last year, like they definitely weren't equipped to do it. Like they weren't even doing that before the pandemic. So trying to put on just a streamed version of Comic-Con was impossible for them because they weren't thinking about it that way, the way E3 does. But realistically, you need to, like, they should have been looking at what E3 had been doing the last like 4 or 5 years with these giant streams, this show. The fact that like E3 has 1 million concurrent viewers on Twitch, YouTube, and all the different platforms that it's on at any given time, like any time of day. It doesn't matter what panel it is, who's talking. Obviously, more people tune into like Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox, but the same would be true of Marvel or DC at Comic-Con, right? But like ultimately, make it a show. It should have been a show starting 5-6 years ago when streaming was getting really, really big. It's crazy that this is just now becoming like the thing that they're trying to do.
It's interesting, but I think Comic-Con is so all-encompassing, and it's so sort of modular, and it is so, people have their different niches and stuff like that they want to go check out. Like I always look for H.P. Lovecraft stuff at Comic-Con. That's not going to be on the main stage.
The same thing is true of gaming too, though.
Sure, absolutely, but from the start, E3 has been tailored to sort of be this streamlined style show. Comic-Con has this lineage, and it's a very different beast than E3.
It is.
Now, granted, they should have pivoted for Comic-Con at home to do that. And DC fandom blew everything out of the water.
Because it was a show. They produced an actual show.
And they had great content, and they don't need Comic-Con anymore. And they might not ever need them again. I'm not saying they're not going to show up there. I just do think it's interesting that it's like you needed it, and then now they're like branching. It's just, and I do think it's cyclical. I think it's going to come back around.
I agree. When like people are vaccinated and you can do big gatherings like that in California again, it will come back. And I think some of these big publishers will come back. I don't know that they'll use it as a platform for their big announcements if they've built up their own platforms at that point, but I think it will come back. I think the beauty of Comic-Con is always going to be walking around, looking at the different artists, looking at the like smaller booths, like trying to get some exclusives, like trying to get your hands on some stuff, and just the memories of just how big it is, and the coming together of it all, which
that's what it is,
which you don't get when it's a show streaming on Twitch, but they still need to do that, and hopefully this is a lesson for Comic-Con. Like, you should have been doing this starting in 2016 or before, and then you didn't, and then
I'm all for a culling of the herd.
Yes, and then Comic-Con at home happened, and now like you guys are in a really bad spot because hopefully they actually do a show this year.
And listen, even if it culls our press passes, I'm fine with a natural selection vibe, and if it dies down a little bit. And for the record, I'm one of the curmudgeons that thought that, hey, don't release these trailers like for everyone to watch, including me, because I didn't camp out to go to Hall H to see it. That sucks for those people.
So you're saying, in a way, it would be actually kind of awesome if like Comic-Con did die down a little bit and it became this like super niche convention.
I don't think super niche. I don't think we're going to get to a point where it's like this small thing or whatever. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that the time where maybe like the time where all of the major news about these types of properties being broken at Comic-Con is gone. News will still come out, details will still be fleshed out, but the like years past, like I think probably peaked in 12 or 13 or whatever, of, hey, you go to like Jon Favreau, like with his understanding, like when he came in with Harrison Ford and Cowboys and Aliens, and was like, no, I can't go to Comic-Con and not have footage. Like, he said that to the audience. He's like, my people are telling me we won't have footage ready, and I said that's unacceptable. We're going to Comic-Con. You don't understand what it's like. Like, the need to have that and have it be exclusive for Comic-Con, it will still happen, but I don't think studios view it as a must anymore.
They might not view it as must, but this is the closest we've got now to a live sporting event and a live nerd event. Because why do you go to a sports game? You can watch it on TV right now. You can get a much better angle, much better view of everything you're watching, just like a trailer. You go there for the experience. You go there to go hang out with your buddies. You go there to get the exclusives. You go there to a sports game to have the the grill out beforehand to tailgate. And it's gotten so close together now that they need to view a live sporting event and these nerddom events as the same, because we are going to still want to go in droves because we want to be around same-minded people that have that energy, That means so much at these events.
I agree.
That's what we need, and that is what's going to drive, that's what's going to propel us to push your product more.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like that's the juice, and so that's why I'm saying if a little bit of the foam off the top gets scraped away and it just condenses a little bit. Like I haven't been there for a few years, but my favorite convention to go to was WonderCon because it was like a diet Comic-Con. You still got like all the big properties were there and everything like that. You even got to see clips from like my very first WonderCon. It was when it was still in San Francisco, and I've told this story a bunch of times. I walked in. It was like a 5-minute line to get into the Watchmen panel for the movie that hadn't come out yet. And they showed us the first 20 minutes of the movie, and they had the whole cast there. And it was a great panel. I was like, dude, this is terrific. And you could just like the hassle of Comic-Con because it has gotten so big. If it shrinks a little bit, I think that'll be for the benefit of everyone. And, you know, it is interesting that it's like streaming services, right? Like Comic-Con essentially was cable for nerddom and all these new properties, and now everybody's getting their own. They're cutting the cord, so you gotta watch DC fandom. You gotta do D23 or whatever to get your Marvel and Star Wars stuff. So it is just kind of an interesting dynamic.
It's there. Like people might look back on like 2019 Comic-Con or 2018 Comic-Con and be like, well, Marvel and DC aren't there anymore, so it's just not the same that it was. But it's like maybe it wasn't that great when you couldn't really engage with any of the activations because there were too many people there, and like you had to like squeeze through people. It's hard. It's hard.
I recommend everybody, if you're into any of this or stuff, you should at least go to one Comic-Con, because I think your first experience oftentimes like it's so indelible. I remember this sensory overload when I stepped in there with somebody's pass I had to buy off somebody at Craigslist because I got sold a bad bill of goods that I was going to be able to use somebody's uncle's pass the whole week, but I was lied to. Anyway, not their fault. But yeah, it's just if it dies down just a little bit, the demand is still there, the hunger is still there, and anytime you still get these, any level of cast members or former cast members going to these things, it's still going to be huge. It's going to be massive. It's still going to be the biggest one of its kind, but it's going to be a little bit different, I think, moving forward. And just the dynamic is shifting a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see if DC fandom becomes an in-person convention, an on-site in-person convention. I'm interested to see how that would go, or if they bring the fandom and they put it in like the Hilton or whatever Comic-Con on a specific day, and that is the DC fandom. I think that there's some interesting developments to come with this, but it's Comic-Con season, and we had to bring it up a little bit. I'm sure some more stories will break on this. Some of us will be meeting up. I don't know how much Comic-Con at home coverage we will be doing this year after last year.
Some of it.
Can't back that up. But we're going to take a break. We're going to give John the rest of the night off because he has not watched Loki. And consider yourself lucky, my friend John. Talk to you soon. We're going to take one more break. On the other side, we're going to be talking about the penultimate episode of Loki, the Best Damn Nerd Show.